Welcome to today's shiur, which is called To Be a Jew. What does it mean to be a Jew? In order to understand what it means to be a Jew and how to be a Jew, one must analyze the very first Jew, Avraham Avinu. Through looking through the lens of his life, the trials and tribulations and the tests that he went through, we will then understand what defines a Jew, what makes you a Jew, just as what made Avraham Avinu the very first Jew. There is a very famous concept called Tikkun Olam, where many people have heard about. Tikkun Olam means rectifying the world. The Holy Arizal says that the world was created for us to cause the greatest degree of godliness to be revealed in the world. But for that level of godliness to be revealed in the world, we have to fix the world. We have to prepare the world and make the world a fitting vessel. How can one prepare the world? The world is so vast and great. So many millions and billions of components to the world. How can each individual be involved in fixing the world, such a vast world? The answer is, the Gemara says that every single individual is a olam katan, a small world, a microcosm, which means that within every single one of us, the DNA of the whole world exists. In a small way, the whole world exists within ourselves. And therefore, if we rectify, polish, prepare ourselves as a fitting vessel, that our being, our essence, ourselves are able to be a fitting vessel for godliness to be revealed within ourselves, then we cause tikkun olam, then we cause the whole world to be prepared and to be rectified and fixed. One of the main ways for us to fix ourselves is to go through the different trials and tribulations that man invariably goes through, the journeys and the travels that man must go through. And every single one of these trials and tribulations and nisyonot and tests that we go through do much to fix and rectify our weaknesses. Even the very weaknesses that we have, but the good qualities and the bad qualities that we have are all tailor-made to enable us to reach our potential in rectifying and fixing and perfecting ourselves and thus the whole world. So really, to be a Jew, what it means to be a Jew, we must look at the very first Jew, Avraham Avinu, the pioneer of Judaism, the pioneer of monotheism. When we understand his successes and the trials that he went through, we can then apply it to our lives and succeed in the trials and tribulations that we go through. According to many opinions, the very first test that Avraham Avinu went through was the test of Lech Lecha. Avraham Avinu went through 10 tests. In order to be a forefather and the pioneer of Judaism, he needed to pass these 10 tests, and we know that the number 10 is very significant. The number 10 represents the 10 emanations, the 10 sfirot, which are the creative powers that was then revealed in the 10 utterances of the creation of the world. And for this reason, there are as well 10 commandments. And this is the reason why Avraham Avinu as well went through 10 tests, or 10 miracles, 10 plagues that the Egyptians experienced, showing God's mastery over every aspect of creation. So it is by no accident that Avraham Avinu had to go through these 10 tests, these 10 trials, to perfect him and to make him into the forefather, to be a Jew. And the very first one, according to the majority of opinions, is Lech Lecha, or at least the very first one that is mentioned in the Torah is Lech Lecha. We know that Avraham Avinu went through the test of Nimrod, of being thrown into the fiery furnace, etc. So according to some opinions, that is at least one of the tests. But according to a lot of opinions, and as I mentioned, at least the very first one that is mentioned in the Torah is the one of Lech Lecha, which we just read about. And it reads as follows: Vayomer Hashem l'Avraham, and God spoke to Abraham saying, Lech Lecha, Go for yourself. Go, journey, travel. Mi'artzecha, from your land, Mimoladcha, from the place of your birth, Mibet Avicha, from the house of your father, La'aretz asher areka, to the land where I will show you. There is no doubt that Avraham Avinu was to travel to the land of Israel, for God's intention was to give the land of Israel as an inheritance to Avraham Avinu and to his children thereafter, as was evident in the covenant. And there is no doubt that the land of Israel is a holy place, and Avraham Avinu was to grow and to develop to greater levels of spiritual heights in the land of Israel. But note that God does not tell him where you are going. Go to the land where I will show you. The reason why this is the first test, or at least the first test that is significant enough to be mentioned in the Torah, is because this is the prototype of all tests, and that is the journey. We all must go through the journey of life. And it's not just about the destination, for God does not reveal to him the destination. It is rather the journey itself. And life is about this journey that we must travel. The success of this journey will be dependent upon our initial attitude, our outlook in this journey to strive to reach perfection and to overcome the tests, to be successful in the trials and the tests that we go through. So life is a journey. It's about lech lecha. It's about the willingness to be able to travel, to go through the journey of life. Lecha, lech lecha. Why the double expression lech lecha? Travel, go, you should surely go. Literally translated as lech lecha, go for yourself. Rashi points out lech lecha, for your own benefit. Lecha, it's for your own benefit. Every test that we go through, every journey that we take, every trial that we go through, and every success that we achieve does much in achieving the purpose of our existence, the reason why the soul came down to this world, lecha, for our own benefit. But a deeper level is lech lecha, travel within yourself, lecha, to yourself, to your essence, to your core. In order for us to be able to be successful, we must always go back to basics, to our essence, to our core, and overcome all of the influences around us, all of the static and all of the things that lead us astray. So God tells Abraham, lech lecha, travel this journey. I'm not even telling you where to go, because it's all about leaving everything that you used to, everything that makes you who you are, and to go to my land, to the place where I will show you. We know that Avraham Avinu took with him Lot, and there was a big difference between Avraham Avinu and Lot. Avraham Avinu was successful, Lot was his nephew. Avraham Avinu was successful in achieving what he needed to achieve to be the first Jew, and Lot unfortunately fell astray. Why was that? As I mentioned, everything depended upon our initial attitude, how we look at things. The difference between Avraham and Lot was that it says, Vayelech Avraham ka'asher diber elav Hashem. Even though God promised Avraham Avinu children that he didn't have at that stage, wealth, to be honored, etc., Avraham Avinu did not follow the dictates of God for his own purposes, for his own benefit. He simply went because God told him to go. And that is what makes a Jew. The difference between Lot was that it says in regards to Lot, Vayelech ito Lot, and Lot went with him. Why? Because he knew that God promised Lot wealth and all of these things, and he wanted to tap into that. He wanted to be a part of that. He wanted to be on the winning side. So Lot went for different reasons. For this reason he failed, because ultimately he ended up in Sodom, because he saw Sodom is a better place to live. He can become more enriched, more wealthy in Sodom rather than hanging around with Avraham Avinu. And so he went to Sodom, which was ultimately his failing. The reason why he's failed was his initial attitude. Why am I journeying? Why am I going on this journey? Lot went on the journey for selfish motivations. Avraham Avinu went for selfless motivations, to be able to serve God, to come close to God, and for this reason he was successful. So too in life. Everything depended upon our initial attitude. If we go with a positive attitude, if we go with a very strong attitude that I'm going to go and I'm going to succeed, not that I will try, Once you start, I'll try, you're already opening yourself up for failure. But when you go with a strong mindset, a mindset that you have a mission to achieve, and you're going to overcome the obstacles, then you will be successful. A very interesting thing that the Midrash Rabbah says in regards to the test of Avraham Avinu. The ultimate test of Avraham Avinu that we all know, and Avraham Avinu is most famous for, is the test of the Akedah, is the binding of Isaac, where there it says, Lech lecha l'eretz HaMoriah. Again, it uses the term Lech lecha, go for yourself. El ha'aretz HaMoriah, el eretz HaMoriah, to the land of Moriah, where you shall bring up your son, and do the ultimate sacrifice of being willing to sacrifice your son to God, to fulfilling everything against your nature and everything against what you understand, to be able to fulfill the will of God. There it says also the two words Lech lecha. Over here, in Parashat Lech Lecha, and in the Akedah, in the binding of Isaac, it uses also the double expression Lech Lecha, which prompts the Midrash to say a very interesting thing. Amar Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi says, Shte pe'amim ktiv Lech Lecha. Twice in the Torah, especially in regards to Avraham Avinu, does it say a command, Lech Lecha, go for yourself. You shall surely go. Ve'enanu yodim eza haviva. And we do not know which one is more precious, which one is more daring, which one is the greater of the two tests. Ima Shiniyah, is it the second one, the second time that it's mentioned, Lech Lecha, to the land of Moriah, to the place where you shall bind the binding of Isaac, bring him up as a sacrifice? Or Rishonah, or Im Rishonah, or the first one where God tells him, leave your land, etc. What does this mean? How can you even compare the two tests? One is surely a great discomfort, to leave the place where you're used to, where you've made a name for yourself, where you built your reputation, your business, your home, etc. Surely it's a great test. And where am I going? I don't even know. God's telling me to go to the land where I will show you. Maybe it's a hostile place. Maybe it's a place that I hate, that I don't like. I don't like the weather. I don't like the environment. A place that is hostile to who I am or what I believe in, which indeed the land of Canaan at that time certainly was. Maybe it's a place that I will not be able to eke out a living, a parnasah. Nonetheless, God did not reveal him the place to make this test, a real trial. And the ultimate goal is to go where God shows us, where God tells us, not for our own gain, for our own purposes, whether we like it or whether we don't. So even though that test surely is a difficult test, but many have gone through that test. Many have uprooted themselves from one land to another land, be it because of war or be it looking for a better future for their children. Many have successfully overcome those hurdles, those trials and tribulations. But the test of sacrificing one's children, whether in times of war, the Holocaust, the Spanish Inquisition, or whatever it is, willing to see your children being sacrificed for what you believe in, for godliness, for Judaism, etc., is the hardest test that any of us will ever be required to be able to achieve. So how can the Midrash equate the two and say we don't know which one is the greater of the two, which one is more endearing to God, which one is great? How can you compare? The truth is, both are crucial and are important. Both styles of tests. The difference between them is that one, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, is a singular test. It's one of those tests, one of the most hardest things that we, a unique, difficult thing that we are all tested with in our lifetimes. For some person, it could be overcoming intermarriage. For another person, it could be something else. For another person, it could be a different, very difficult sacrifice to be able to say no to a life-changing event that usually occurs once, twice, maybe 3 times in our lifetimes. In regards to Avraham Avinu, the binding of Isaac is a one-time test. You overcome that, you muster the strength to overcome it, and you know you need to overcome it. You know it's crucial to the very core of your essence, your identity, and what's going to define you. But you know it's a one-time thing. It's not ongoing. But the test of Lech Lecha, the Lech Lecha means go away, travel away, distance yourself away from everything that you are used to, everything that made you who you are, everything that you're accustomed to, that defined who you are till now, to be righteous, to be spiritual, to be godly, that's an everyday test. The journeys and the tests and the trials that we go through, leaving our comfort zones, that is a daily test. And that is a test that is constant and exceedingly difficult to maintain on a regular basis. Not for naught, the Alter Rebbe teaches us, the Baal HaTanya teaches us a mechanism how to overcome the daily grind, the daily trials and tribulations of serving God, of overcoming our weaknesses, or anger, or jealousy, or greed, or whatever the case may be, or whatever weaknesses we may have on a regular basis, or indulgences that we would like to indulge ourselves with, the pleasures or the desires that lure us away from spirituality and godliness and fulfilling our life's mission. The Baal HaTanya says that surely deep down every single Jew has the capacity and the willingness to never separate himself from God. And when he is tested, a test of the ultimate test of faith, the Jew will give up his life invariably to not cut himself away from God. So the Baal HaTanya explains, but when we transgress even one of the commandments, not necessarily one that the very essence and core of our faith depends on, like for example that of giving up our faith, converting to another faith, doing an act of idol worship, for example, that throughout history we have been tested, and the Jewish people have given up their lives for time and again. When we understand that even the so-called smaller sins are also to a degree an idol worship, i.e. placing that desire or the temptation or my will or my desire before that of God, is a subtle or by extension a form of idol worship or denying of God, or that at least relegating God to the concept of abstract, not real and not relevant to our lives. And therefore, by extension, every weakness or every sin or every transgression is one that we distance ourselves from God to a certain degree. And therefore, if we understand, says the Baal HaTanya, that we have the strength and the capacity to not want to separate ourselves from God, and we would be willing to go through the ultimate sacrifice of giving up our lives, and surely we have the strength and the ability to do a smaller sacrifice and not indulge in this particular prohibition, transgression, and this the desire or pleasure that lures us away. But it's difficult, because the Talmud says, "En adam hoteh ela en michnas bo ruach shtut." A person does not err, does not sin, only when the spirit of folly enters him and convinces him that it's okay, it's not the end of the world. And that's what ends up happening. The constant grind and battle of serving God is that the evil inclination convinces us it's okay. We are still maintaining, we're still godly, we're still a Jew, we are still connected to God. But unfortunately, the truth is that to a certain degree, that's not true. We are distancing ourselves from God. We are cutting ourselves from God. We are proclaiming ourselves more important than God, which is a form of idol worship. And therefore, for this reason, the Midrash says we don't know which Lech Lecha is greater, which Lech Lecha is more powerful, which Lech Lecha is more Haviv, is more precious. There's the great trial, the one-time trial of giving up, the ultimate trial of giving up your life to God, like Abraham Avinu was willing to do, either for himself or for his son. Or the regular Lech Lecha, the continually traveling away from our comfort zone, away from my desires, my pleasures, what I want to do, to travel to the land where God will show us to the will of God. Both of them are powerful, and both of them are important. And in fact, this very first trial of Lech Lecha, or at least the very first one that is recorded in the Torah, is really the prototype of all of the trials that we all go through that will define who we are as a Jew and what it means to be a Jew. And that is to continually be willing to travel in the direction pointing our moral compass towards truth and towards God's will, and not what I want to do. The very simplistic form of looking at this verse is that God commanded Abraham Avinu, Lech lecha me'artzecha, leave your land, mimolatcha, the place of your birth, mi bet avicha, from the house of your father, to the land where I will show you, meaning to say, leave that which is all of your life's influences. From this stage on, to be a Jew, to be godly, we must leave everything that influenced us in the past to be who we are. The place of our birth, our upbringing, our environment, social structure, etc., what is politically correct, and what is the influences around us, societal norms, etc., cannot define us and dictate to us above and beyond the truth that we know, the godly truth. So we must be in a constant state of lech, of advancement in the service of God, and this is to be a Jew. This is what it means to be a Jew. On a deeper level, the definition of these three concepts, these words, which are three concepts, is lech lecha, travel away, mi'artzecha. The word eretz shares the same root as ratzon, from your will. Travel away from your will, even if your will is a spiritual will. In other words, even if your desire is one of spirituality, one has to leave that aside in place and in preference and in deference to the will of God. Even if your will or your desire is for spiritual pursuits, nonetheless, because we are mortal, everything about us is mortal and limited and has a certain degree of selfishness, even though the motivation may be a good one. The other one is mimoladetecha, the place of your birth, the nature that we are born with, the qualities, the characteristic traits. We all have negative characteristic traits, and that we have to uproot, and we have to break, and we have to perfect. But we also have good characteristic traits. And those characteristic traits have no place in the service of God, which means that if a person is kind by nature and he gives charity because he is kind, that's not serving God. That is serving yourself. That is an extension and an expression of who you are. If a person honors his parents just simply because he appreciates what his parents have done for him, that's a very good thing. But that stems from a certain degree of selfishness, even though it is a good act, it is a special act, and to be encouraged and embraced and celebrated. But nonetheless, it's a big difference when you serve God, when you fulfill the mitzvah of honoring your parents, not only because you naturally love them, not only because of an appreciation of what they have done for you, but simply because God has commanded you and you are fulfilling the will of God. The Holy Arizal says that whichever mitzvah we fulfill, not for our own purposes, in other words, not for our own fulfillment, for example, a spiritual fulfillment, an emotional or intellectual fulfillment because it engages my intellect, or it uplifts me, or it gives me a good feeling, or for example, that of charity, it makes me feel good. If you notice that you ask people, why did you do this act of kindness? It made me feel good. Made me feel good. That's a very good thing. It's a nice thing, but it's not serving God. So all of that we have to leave in deference to serving God. So the Holy Arizal says, what is parents? Parents, from a Kabbalistic point of view, Av ve'em are the first and the greatest of the emanations. Abba and Ima are referred to Chokhmah and Binah. Chokhmah and Binah are from the greater emanations of godliness. And therefore, says the Arizal, every mitzvah has a particular emanation where it is rooted in its spiritual source. And therefore, when you concentrate and focus your attention on fulfilling the mitzvah on a spiritual perspective, you draw down that particular emanation where that mitzvah is rooted in. So, for example, honoring one's parents is Abba ve'ima, father and mother. Spiritually, father and mother refers to the emanations of divine wisdom and divine understanding. So when we are fulfilling the mitzvah not only of honoring one's parents, not only because of our love and our dedication, our appreciation, but because God commanded it, it's a spiritual act as well. We connect to the highest levels of spirituality or draw that down upon ourselves. And therefore, We have to leave our will. We have to leave everything that we are used to. We have to leave our nature, even a good nature. In other words, don't give charity, but don't only give charity because you are a kind person. What happens if you're not so kind? What happens if you're miserly? You don't give charity. We are obligated to give charity because God commanded us to give charity, not because I'm a kind person and not because it makes me feel good. There was one time a great rabbi who one time gave charity, and then he called the person back and he gave him again, and he said, why did you give me twice? And if you wanted to give me a greater amount, why didn't you give it to me in the first time? Why did you inconvenience yourself and inconvenience me? What was the lesson behind it? And he says, when I heard your story, the rabbi responded, when I heard your story, my heart melted and my heart broke. And I gave you out of the mercy that I felt naturally within my heart. But that wasn't serving God, and that wasn't the mitzvah of giving charity. That was simply expressing my feeling of mercy towards you. But the second time I gave, because I realized that the first time I really didn't serve God, I really served myself, as high as noble that may be. The second time I gave, simply because God commanded me to give, and I gave it for that commandment. And the third concept is mibet avicha, from the house of your father. Father in Kabbalah means Av, Chokhmah, wisdom, the intellectual pursuits, the conclusions that we come to. Every single person will tell you, oh, I love it when I fulfill mitzvot that I understand. But ultimately, to be a Jew is to transcend all of these concepts. Your nature, even though it may be good. Your will, even though it may be spiritual. And your understanding or your intellectual outlook towards something, even though it may be great and perfect. Because we are mortal. The idea is to transcend all of those and to go to the land where I will show you. The word land, Eretz, as we mentioned before, has the same root as Ratzon, the land, the will that God will show us. In other words, enter God's will. Enter, that's how you enter godliness. And that is what it means to be a Jew. That is what defines us as a Jew. Serving God on His terms, not on yours. From the greatest failures of the Jewish people were when we served God on our own terms. When, for example, Moshe Rabbeinu did not come, and after God revealed Himself on Mount Sinai, and Moshe Rabbeinu did not descend from the mountain, the people figured, well, we need a medium to communicate with, and they created a golden calf, an animal being the representation of the animal kingdom that cannot talk back. Let God speak through an animal, not through man, because man, maybe he'll give his own opinion, etc. But that wasn't the will of God. The will of God is that there should be prophets. And at that time, Moshe Rabbeinu was meant to come back, and they made a miscalculation. So this miscalculation was based upon a good motivation, but nonetheless their own motivation, their own ideas, their own serving God on their own terms, how they understand things, but not truly. They weren't intuitive to the true will of God. Another one was when they sent the spies to scout the land, and they gave a report. But not only did they give a report, they gave an opinion. And the opinion is that it's not for us. We won't be able to conquer the land, despite the fact that God promised them that He'll give them the land, and that you shall surely conquer the land, and I have promised it to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, etc. They gave their own opinion, and that's where they're failing. Our failings is when the greatest failing is when we serve God on our terms, not on His terms. And that is what Lech Lecha means. Go to leave everything behind. Leave serving God on your terms and serve God on His terms to the land where He will show you to His will, to His desire. And that is what it means to be a Jew, and that is what defines a Jew and will always define a Jew and will be the success of our self-perfection. So we find that God tells Abraham Avinu, go to the land where I will show you, and I promise you, you will have a great name, you will have children, and that you will become a great nation, you will have honor and wealth, etc. What happens? He comes to the land of Israel, and there's a famine. He's forced to the land of Egypt. But he doesn't ask. He doesn't ask, why did I come to this land that you came, and that you commanded me to come and leave everything behind, and you promised me riches and wealth, and now that there's a famine here? He didn't ask why. He didn't say, I don't understand why there is a famine in the land. And even though I don't understand why there is a famine in the land, I still serve you. God promised him children. For 25 years, Sarah was barren. He didn't, and he said, I don't understand why my wife is barren, despite your promises, but I still serve you. I don't understand why my wife was abducted in Egypt. She went to Egypt. She was very beautiful. She was abducted. Why did she need to be abducted? God promised him wealth and honor and comfort and leisure and all of these things. And here he goes through one test after another test, trials and tribulations and difficulties. He doesn't understand. We may not understand, but still serve him. Because we serve him on his terms, not on our terms. We don't say, God, I've been praying to you. I've been praying. Why are you not answering our prayers? Despite the fact that I've been praying and praying, you haven't answered my prayers, or you haven't brought about that which I'm praying for, I still serve you. That is what defines a Jew, and that is the Lech Lecha. Leave everything behind. Leave all of your baggage behind. Even though that they may be spiritually motivated. And so too in regards to the Akedah, to the trial and the test of the binding of Isaac. He didn't understand. How is it possible that Abraham Avinu was preaching for so long against human sacrifice? And God promised him that Yitzhak will be called your seed. He will be the progenitor of all of your children after you. And all of a sudden God commands him to go and bring him up as a sacrifice. It flies in the face of everything that Abraham Avinu taught, everything that Abraham Avinu understood and knew. Yet he said, nonetheless, even though I don't understand, I will still serve you and I will do your will. That is what it means to be a Jew. That is what defines us. And that is the success when we begin off with this attitude of leaving all of our baggage behind, even spiritual baggage, leaving everything behind and doing God's will and pointing our spiritual compass towards morality and God's truth, not how I perceive it, nor how I want it to be. That is what defines a Jew.